published around the sale. I believe Keeneland, which is one of the largest auction houses, has published a mid-September, I think third week in September, calendar for their auction. There are two other big auction houses that we're waiting on as well, and hopefully in the next 30 days we'll come out with a date. But if I was forced to put that down in stone, it would be the middle of September is what we're targeting. Also keep in mind that date, one of the reasons that we want to do it right around the time of the yearling sales is we'd like to be able to capture the actual data around what the horse is sold for in real life, so that when you get your mint, you're able to look at your horse and pretty quickly identify its value, right? So if you get a horse that sold for $50,000 at auction versus a horse that sold for $1.5 million at auction, it becomes quite evident as to what the prospects of that horse are. And although nobody really knows, it's somewhat driven by consensus when you have an auction where you have thousands of people bidding on horses, and the horses trade for high values. There's a good probability that those horses come from very prominent bloodlines and are going to have real value in the secondary market. So we'd like to have that information and incorporate it into the NFTs before the drop if possible. And that's largely what's driving the timing.
Also, I just thought of this when you were saying that, personally, having, the horsemen, close to those yearling sales, even for the thoroughbred industry, maybe they went to that sale that day, didn't buy the horse they wanted in IRL, having the dates pretty close and them going on OpenSea, the secondary market, and trying to find that other horse, because they still have that emotion of missing out there. The timeline could be perfect.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody that misses out on a horse in a real auction comes to us and buys the horse here. We're already seeing a lot of chatter from within the industry around how people are going to use our platform as a way to arbitrage the real world. So, yeah, totally.
Awesome. And I think that's a perfect lead into, something that we've been seeing a lot. And I think this is something on most people's minds. We can talk about now, actually, how much will these horses cost?
Sure. So this is a question that, we've been asked from the very beginning, and, we've been hesitant to give a direct answer because, a lot of that is dictated by, the makeup and constituency of our community. But given that it does really impact everybody in terms of thinking about, how am I going to play the game? What should I be focused on? And will I be able to afford to buy these horses? I do think that it's relevant. We've talked a little bit about it internally. And so I'll try to be a little more direct in terms of answering the question for everyone. And I'll recap kind of the company line and what I've been saying for those that haven't heard me talk about pricing yet, and then I'll be more specific. So when it comes to the way we modeled the business, our goal was to create an on-ramp that would get us to parity with the real world. And I think that's really important, because when you can create parity with the real world and truly make it create an indifference around whether you own the real horse or whether you own the silk horse from an economic perspective, you really have something special. And I think not just in our platform, but I think across Web3, we'll begin to see a lot of that. People really trying to peg their value to the real world. And so we had built a model that showed an escalation of value over time that would get us there in about 6 to 7 years. And that was using, at the time, 1 ETH as a price point, an entry price point for the horse. Now, what I can tell you is that was just it was a model, it was a financial model. And at the end of the day, it's the community that's going to decide where we want to start this. Whether we sell a horse for 0.1 of an ETH, or 1 ETH, or 5 ETH is irrelevant to the company. But it's very relevant to the community. So we want everybody to be able to have an entry point into the game, and we want everybody to collectively come to a common ground in terms of where they want the stakes to start. So this is a decision that the community is going to make. And it's the same decision that you would make walking into a poker room and deciding, do I want to sit at a 5-10 game or at a 10-20 game? We can start this game as low as the community wants to start it. Remember, this is a long-term game. And it's going to evolve over time, and the value is going to grow over time. And so if we started at a very low entry point, then it will take a little longer for us to get there. And it's all about what the community wants to risk and what the community wants to gain. So there are two ways that we can do this. We can do this through a poll. We can poll our community and ask our community, where would you like this to start? Where would you like this mint to start at? And we're perfectly willing to do that. That's one way that we'll get to the number. The second way we can get to the number is we can do a reverse Dutch auction, where basically the clearing price is the price at which we sell through the collection. And so the community essentially indirectly makes that decision, and that's a common practice that's been used in the NFT world. So those are both options for how we get there. What I'll add on to the answer as follows: that it's not just the price of the mint that's a factor. It's also going to be a factor as to the fractionalization of the horses, right? So when you take a horse and you fractionalize that horse, it creates an entry point for people to play that may not either be able to afford a horse in its entirety, or somebody that doesn't want to take the risk and consolidate all of their investment in one horse. And we think that's going to be a big part of the game. So, by example, if these horses were priced at 1 ETH and you could buy a tenth of a horse for 0.1, that would provide a lot of entry for people to become partners in that. If the horses are priced at 0.1 and you could buy into a horse for 0.01, you're talking about getting into the game for $10 or $20. And from my perspective, we want this to be entertaining, engaging, and adrenaline driving, right? We want this to be something that's going to be meaningful to everybody. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the community is going to form around a number that's going to make sense, and that's where we're going to go. And I've seen chatter in the chat rooms around where we're going to end up pricing this, and I hear anything from 0.1 to 1 ETH, and the reality is it's going to be somewhere in, I think, a range that's going to again create enough velocity for us to create a really powerful game with a really incredible opportunity for everybody, and it's also going to be priced at a point where everybody can participate. So if I'm sounding vague, tell me, and I'll be more clear. But I really think it's going to be something nobody's going to have to worry about, because the market will tell us where the right price is. And given everybody's interest in knowing this, it probably makes sense for us to do this sooner rather than later and come up with a price point, well in advance of the actual mint, to be able to give everybody guidance. But I honestly believe that that we're gonna reach a price point that's gonna make everybody happy, which is what our goal is, right? We want a large community of people playing this game, engaged in the platform, and I call it a game, but it's more than a game, and really becoming entrenched in the platform and a deep part of the community, and we'll price it accordingly.
I think it was great when we were talking yesterday, and you were saying, if we were to price it at 0.2, right? The only real effect that it would have, right, is on the prize pools that come out.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's if you're playing a 5-10 poker game, no limit poker game, the pot's going to be $200. If you're playing a 10-25 poker game, the pot might be $700. It's just a question of the stakes. And remember that, the stakes are much more than just the horse. The stakes come from a lot of different factors. So, for example, if you decide you're going to build a farm, and you're going to start with I'm making this up, a 10-acre farm with 10 horses. And you're going to mint your horses, decide which ones you want to keep, which ones you want to sell, and which ones you want to fractionalize. And then you go into the open market and really start researching horses and decide, I'm going to assemble a stable around this strategy. I'm going to buy some horses that are high risk, high reward. They come from, great bloodlines, but there's some questionality around certain aspects of the horse. And I'm going to buy some horses that actually don't come from, great bloodlines and are much less expensive, but there's something within, that horse's characteristics or bloodline that makes them interesting. And so you end up building a portfolio like a hedge fund, right? And you set up a farm and you decide, I'm going to syndicate these horses and I'm going to sell half of the ownership in these horses, right? By doing that and pricing it above what you paid for it, because you did all the work to really curate your collection, right? People can now come in and buy into your farm and invest with you alongside you. Well, you could take all of your money off the table and free ride on the ownership that remains with you. So at the end of the day, the cost of buying the horse was something that you fronted, but ultimately took off the table, and that was a way you chose to play the game. Some people might say, you know what, I want to build my stable and I want to own 100% of my horses. Well, in that case, the cost of that horse becomes much more relevant to you. So it really all depends on how you choose to play the game. You might choose to play the game by building a farm and just making it available for people to stake their horses in which case you want the cost of the horse to be as high as possible because you're earning a share of their winnings without investing in the horse itself. The way this game was designed, the game theory that drives this platform is agnostic to the value of the horse or the risk you take in the horse if you choose to play it as a farm owner or as a land speculator or as a developer or as a syndicator. It all depends on how you want to play the game. But at the end of the day, the price of the horse is gonna just drive the prize pool and how fast we get there. I can tell you that when we reveal the first crop of horses, there's going to be a lot of volatility. There are going to be horses that are going to trade for a lot of money, and there are going to be horses that are going to trade for very little money. And people are going to kind of jockey around the horses, figuring out what they want to collect. The floor is going to be meaningless because, again, the differentiation between these assets is so vast and so speculative that everybody has a different view and a different perspective. And as we saw in the Kentucky Derby, one of the cheapest horses you could have purchased was the horse that won the Kentucky Derby, ahead of horses that sold for orders of magnitude greater than that horse. And that's the beauty of the sport, and that's going to be the beauty of our platform. And look, the truth is that wherever we start doesn't really matter because ultimately, as this community grows and as the game grows, the acceleration of value in our platform can grow exponentially. When you look at some of the blue chip projects out there, I'll just use Bored Ape Yacht Club as an example. I mean, that mint was 0.08 a year ago, right? And those assets are now trading for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the owners of those assets that held on to them, that bought them inexpensively and grew with the community, have made millions of dollars. And that's what this is about. It's about becoming a part of a community from the very beginning and contributing to the community as an active member and as an active player and growing with us. And everything rises with the tide. And that's where we are. We're sitting right at the foundation of something very special that we're all a part of. And wherever we start, we start. So I know it's a long-winded answer. And whether these horses drop at 0.2 ETH or 0.5 ETH or 1 ETH, it won't matter at the end of the day. What will matter is that we do it at a price point that works for the community. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Perfect. Let's move on. So, let's go back to the horses real quick. How do we plan on selecting the 10K of the ones that are actually born?
Sure. So, as I stated in the white paper, and as I talk about when I present on Game of Silks, over the course of the last 20 years, there were roughly an annual crop of about 20,000 horses that were born and registered to race each year. That pool consists of horses that were born to owners of a mare that chose to keep them, horses that were sold in private sales, and horses that are sold at auction. About 50% of the horses that are born and registered are sold at auction. And typically, those horses are the horses that theoretically have the greatest prospect of being successful in their racing and breeding career because they come from prominent bloodlines. That's not to say that there are many horses that are sold privately or that are never sold by the owners of the mares that aren't fantastic horses. In order for us to create an experience in the first year that's fantastic for our community, we wanted to create an environment in which there's a higher probability that our horses will train well enough to race and actually race. So if you look at the field of rookies that come into the game each year, there's a small percentage that actually never race. There's a small percentage that race and never win. There's a percentage that win but don't win enough to be good breeding candidates. And that's how the game works. So we wanted to create a higher degree of success for our community early on, because as a platform, the way this all works is we want to create, I'm going to call it gaming wealth, right? We want to create value for our community early on, because if we can create value for our community will reinvest that value as they develop resources within the game. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. You know, many of you were in the winner circle and worked very hard to help build this community and engage with the community. And you were able to mint at a preferred price point, which today, if you look at our average sale, is 100% greater than the price you paid to get into the game. Now, some of the people that did that bought multiple avatars and may have sold some of them and created value that can now be used to buy horses or to buy land or to develop that land, right? The more that we can create value for our community as we grow organically, the more value there is to reinvest within the platform, which then perpetuates even more value. That's how it works. And it works that way in the real world. You know, I've used real estate as an example. You buy real estate, you sit on it, 10 years later it doubles in value. You now get a mortgage and refinance that real estate, take that money and either buy new real estate or improve the real estate that you owned, and everybody is better for it. And this is the same thing that's going to happen here. Our incentive is to create value for this community in many different ways so that you can take that value and reinvest it into the platform. And that's what we intend to do. So by creating or culling the first crop of horses to create a greater value for our community with a higher probability of actually generating value through your horse, we're essentially taking out risk from the game. I'll use, and I don't know how many people are gamers or gamblers in the community. I suspect that there are plenty. If you look at, I'll go back to a poker analogy. If you look at poker, poker is considered a game of skill, and it very much is a game of skill. However, there are different genres of poker that have different levels of variability of skill versus luck. Every game has some component of luck. Not just a game. In the real world, luck plays a part in the success of any company, including our business. timing is a very big manifestation of luck. Knowing exactly the right time to launch a business is not something that anybody can, we just guess at it and we get lucky. When you look at poker, there is no limit hold'em, which has a large degree of skill, and then there's a game called Omaha. Omaha has a high degree of luck. Both games are poker, but you choose to play one game because you want the action, and you choose to play another game because you want the skill to play a greater factor. And it's the same thing in our world. And so we want to de-risk, we want to take out more of the luck factor in the early stages of the game to be able to create more value for our skilled players. We're never going to remove the luck factor at all, but it will exist less so in the beginning than it will in the end. So that is so the way we're going to pick the first 10,000 horses is we're going to largely use the yearling sales platforms that have already curated their horses as a guidance for the horses that we're going to select to introduce, to tokenize and mint for the community.
That's awesome. It's great just hearing you explain it all out. Let's move on. I think we've talked about the horses a bunch here. I think everybody's interested as well in our plans for the unrevealed 5K avatars, how we plan on engaging people to buy, how we plan on bringing people in Discord, and kind of how the 5K will play into the next few months.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about the state of the community, because I think, I hear a lot of chatter around that, and I want to address it because it feeds right into this question. So this morning, early in the morning, we broke on OpenSea. They reported 1,700 plus unique wallets that own our avatars. I can tell you that there are still hundreds of undistributed avatars, several hundred. I don't know the exact number, but it's in the 200-ish range. These are people that purchased using fiat, and we're still communicating with everybody. We've distributed 75 or 80% of all of those purchases, but we still have some stragglers. So I expect the organic number to be right around 2,000 right now. It's just not showing up on OpenSea that way, but it will soon. And we very much would like to see this community grow between now and the launch of the game. And so it would be great if we could, attract several thousand more people to come into the game. To do that, we have to allocate a budget to marketing, right? To engage the NFT community, to engage the NFT/Web3 community, to engage the incumbent horse racing community, to engage the fantasy gaming and gambling community. I mean, these are, horse enthusiasts, gamers, gamblers, and NFT buyers are a large constituent of who we think would be attracted to our community and to our platform. The beauty of where we're sitting right now is that we have an arsenal, a war chest of assets that can be deployed to generate significant marketing dollars to go out there and acquire a larger consumer base, a larger community fairly quickly. We have about 4.5 months or so to do that, and our intention is to utilize these assets to go after building this community. And the beauty of it, if you think about it, is that when you look at an avatar, or when you look at an unrevealed avatar, there's meaningful value to that. When you market, you think of marketing all in the context of cost of acquisition of a consumer. So in traditional marketing, right, you have an asset, let's say that you're selling a watch, and that watch is $200. And it costs you $100 to produce the watch. Well, you're willing to pay a certain amount of the cost of that watch to acquire that customer and to still make a profit. That's a marketing budget. So you might decide I'm going to spend up to 20% of the resale of that watch, which in the case would be $40, to acquire that customer who buys the watch for $200 and leaves you with a $60 profit. In our case, we're delighted at the fact that we can use our avatars and allocate significant marketing dollars to acquire a consumer who's going to then buy the avatar, where the money's going to come right back into the company. And that same consumer is going to contribute to the growth of the platform and invest in the platform. So we're very lucky to have this collection, which we'll be able to deploy to grow the community and to grow the community quickly. And I can tell you that we're working internally as a team on two major initiatives. And one of those initiatives is developing the marketing plan to actually use these assets to build our community to grow our community as fast as possible. And we will announce in the coming weeks our strategy and a timeline for the deployment and sale of those assets.
It's great. I know everyone's really excited to, hear about what's going on with those other assets in the longer term. So,
yeah, we're gonna. I mean, as you know, the commitment I made when we decided to cap the mint at 5,000 was that these assets will never sell for below the public mint price. And kind of looking at the market and where it is right now, we want to protect our investors and our community, and we will structure this, and sell them at a value that makes sense, and at a value that will draw a really nice incremental lift to our community, which we're very, very excited to see happen. So we're developing the plans right now, and I expect that within the next 30 days we're going to launch an aggressive marketing campaign and use the funds from the sale of these assets to fund that campaign. Most NFT projects are very lightly funded. Most of them fail, and most of them are very lightly funded. They just don't use significant marketing dollars to build community. We're the opposite. We are going to deploy meaningful capital into building our community. Our community is our value, right? This is the value of our platform, and so our intention is to invest in it heavily.
Awesome. I mean, I know some of the stuff we've been talking about on the back end, it's really exciting. So I just can't wait for everyone to see.
Yeah.
But when we talk about, I know we've been talking about this value, right? What is this? I mean, I guess in the immediate, next few weeks, and then longer term, what is this value that is being driven to our holders currently?
So, the first thing we did was build a community. We then introduced the Silk's Genesis Avatar Collection to the community, and the Avatar Collection is a collection of 3D avatars that represent many, many things in our metaverse. And I'll just recap some of them because it's important for everybody to continue to focus on this because it is so important. One is it represents your identity. You can't play the game in its entirety without having an identity. And so in order to be a horse owner, an entire horse owner, you need a Silk's avatar because that's how you get rewarded. You don't need one if you're a limited partner in a syndication. You don't need one to own land or to build a farm. But if you are going to own horses, you do need a Silk's avatar. So that's one. The second important thing, and this is specific to the Genesis collection, is that the Genesis collection is a one-time special value asset that will give the holder the right to mint a horse per avatar in perpetuity. So initially, and I want to be very clear about this, we originally thought we were going to create new avatars each year, to bring in new people in the community and give them similar rights. We stepped back from that and decided that our foundational community would retain those rights, which means that the first 10,000 horses every year will be mintable by the owners of our Genesis avatars. Now, I want you to think of this as a perpetual mint pass or whitelist. And that is massively valuable. And that is what the community owns right now. And that's not going away. And that will never be recreated in the future. So future avatar sales will check the box for identity. These avatars will look completely different than what we have today. So you will know that they're not part of the Genesis collection. And they will not have rights and value similar to what we have. The perpetual mint pass is one value. There are other values that we've talked about, like hodling value. There's value in the terms of different types of rewards that are limited to Genesis avatar holders, and value that will be distributed to Genesis avatar holders. And I don't want to quantify very specific things right now, other than what I've shared with you, but to tell you that, these assets have special value that will never be recreated, and our success will amplify that value as we grow as a community. These are scarce assets. So today, we're a community of several thousand people. As we grow to tens of thousands of people over time, there will still only be 10,000 Genesis avatars. And so people that want the privilege and the benefits of owning this and owning one of these foundational assets will create the demand, which will theoretically drive up the value of these assets because of the scarcity, right? There's a fixed supply, and we'll never recreate more of them. And
I mean, when you look at OpenSea, right, like you were explaining it to me, like when you just look at the numbers for what people, were able to come in at.
Yeah, I mean, look at the value we've created already, right? We're in a bear market right now. There is not a single project launching right now of any value in the NFT world. Yet we're sitting here, right, with an asset, with a collection that has a very shallow supply level, that's trading at a significant premium to the initial market. I mean, these are assets that were minted at 0.15. Forget the value of the dollar because that's irrelevant. You're comparing ETH to ETH, right? We've had sales in excess of 5 ETH. Our average sales are over 100% of the value that these were minted at, and 50% if you were part of the public or if you bought aftermarket. And that's just assuming, the floor. And the floor is irrelevant because the floor represents a very shallow basis of available supply. I mean, the floor right now, as I look at my screen, is 0.219. Once somebody buys that avatar, the next price is 0.3, and the price right after that is 0.25. Sorry, 0.23 and then 0.25. So the floor is kind of meaningless from my perspective, other than from the fact that this is a high demand project where people truly believe in it and are holding firm on the value. And we see anomalies in transactions overnight. I'm sure some of you watched some valuable avatars sell for, like fractions of their value. I don't know how that happens. But it happens because people are either careless or they've misset the way they list their avatars, etc. But I think that our price points and our value is very crystal clear to anybody looking at it. In fact, so much so that we are being inundated by influencers and thought leaders to get involved with us now. They're looking at our project, and a lot of these guys, if you look at the evolution of the NFT market, everybody was shilling for everybody. And then there was a wave of so-called rug pulls where people essentially launched projects and then disappeared with the money from the community. And then these influencers decided they needed to be careful, and they're not going to promote projects until they have much clearer visibility into the team and into the validation and seeing the validation of the product. Well, we've passed that point. We're 20 days into this since the mint, and people are starting to take notice and realizing, wow, this is an incredible community that is truly committed to this project with a high quality product offering that is literally defeating the negative forces in the market. I mean, we have to put this in context. If we weren't in a bear market right now, we would be at a very different price point. And we will be at a very different price point as we grow this thing and as people begin to realize the value. We're still at the very early stages. So again, I'm talking about it. I probably shouldn't be talking about it because it truly is not material in the short run. And 30 or 60 days from now, when we're talking about it and the price points are very different, it'll be comical to think about, the things we're talking about right now. But I'm mentioning it because you asked me about value, and that's value right there. And It's value not created by me, not created by the Silks team. It's value created and controlled by the community. The community decides everything. The community decides how much these things are selling for, how valuable they are, just like it's going to decide what are the stakes we're playing for in a 20-year game.
Yep. I mean, it's remarkable. Like you're saying, like when you look at the floor, like and you just, it's me. I mean, we talk on the stable table about how meaningless it is, but just in context of like, us not even, like you said, still developing marketing plans, still planning on selling out, the rest of the 5K. It's like it's crazy to see, how thin it actually is, right?
It's crazy, but it's even more crazy if you look at a traditional PFP project right now, and many people in our community, hold a lot of different NFT assets, right? If you look at any of these projects that have launched in these markets right around the time we launched, they're trading at fractions of their mint price, right? Because there really is no value and there is no market because there's no substance to a lot of these projects and to a lot of these communities. And look, I'm an owner. I've been buying into NFTs for a long time and, with mixed results. And I've been doing it for fun, and there are things that appeal to me and there are things that, are momentum plays, etc. But yeah, you just have to look at it in the context of where we are in the world right now. We're at a period where, crypto has been hammered because of a variety of different things. And if you look at the volatility in the space, it's true to the cycles that we've seen. It'll come back, and it'll come back roaring. We don't know when that will be. It could be tomorrow. It could be in a week. It could be in 2 months. We're agnostic to it. I know that some people are probably asking, what do I think about, the impact of crypto over the course of the last couple of weeks, and how is that going to affect our business? Which you haven't asked me about yet, but I'm sure it's probably on your list of questions.
It is. Do we just get into that now, I guess?
Sure.
So I just want, so why don't you just update everyone how Silks is doing in relative to the market and what your thoughts are on it?
Sure. So I'll start with the fact that we have not touched the wallet. To my knowledge, I believe the Mint wallet is still populated with the Ethereum that came in. And the reason for that is, it took us a while to get the right account set up at leading institutions that will allow us to create an off-ramp for crypto and an on-ramp to fiat. And the reason for that is because we're earning in crypto and we're spending, at least right now, in fiat. So there has to be a transition. Now, from that perspective, there is an impact, right? Because we earn in Ethereum and we spend in the dollar. So to the extent that that's upside down, that has an impact on our buying power. and our impact on our ability to spend money on resources that we need to build, market, and deliver the platform. Having said that, we raised venture capital in fiat, and we also sold a meaningful percentage of this collection in fiat. And so we have plenty of fiat right now. And if you look at the cycle of the historical cycle of crypto, assuming it tracks a similar cycle in recent times, we'll be able to weather the storm without a problem. So we're not considering that at all. I can tell you personally, I have a long-term view of Ethereum and Bitcoin and several other tokens, and I don't look at the market. I buy every day. I have a standing order to buy a small amount of certain assets every day, and I just don't look at it because it's irrelevant to me, because I have a very strong conviction, and that conviction is that the underlying thesis behind why I invest in these assets is so strong that I don't care what the market thinks. Now, having said that, I can be right, I can be wrong. I'm not giving anybody investment advice. I'm just telling you how I feel. As far as the company is concerned, I have that same conviction, which is why I really, although I reference the floor, it's irrelevant. And then, although I reference the fact that, we've had assets that have sold for, a lot of money. I think our peak transaction value so far to date is 5 ETH. I think whoever sold those at 5 ETH are going to find that was and whoever bought them are going to find that was a great deal one day. And I have strong conviction around that. I've personally, purchased avatars for thousands of dollars because I have a very strong conviction around that. But it's my conviction that's relevant, not the supply and demand in the short run. And so I encourage this community to think the same way. I buy things that speak to me. So when I see something and I can imagine my horse being draped in those colors, or my farm flying a flag in those designs, to me, that speaks to me and I want to own it. If I see something rare that's underpriced or that I can scoop up, I know that that's going to be super desirable and I want it. And that's how I buy. I ascribe to the fundamentals that most art dealers will teach you, which is buy what you like. You can use guidance in terms of somebody curating an assortment for you to pick from. But ultimately, you have to enjoy it. And the value will come if it comes. So, and I would say the same thing around these avatars, but recognize that the price of these avatars right now doesn't even come close to reflecting the value that we're going to deliver if we're successful. And I can just look at the evolution of some of these great projects that are out there that have really shocked the world in terms of the values that they've created for their communities in such a short period of time. We think of Bored Apes, we think of CryptoPunks as if they've been around for decades. They haven't. Most of these projects that are trading at tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in value, have been around for a year or less. Okay, there are outliers that have been around for more, but most of them have been around for a year or less. And the velocity has been incredible. And while we're in a lull right now in the general market, we're very buoyant and growing, and I think that's going to continue to happen. I think if we're doing as well as we're doing right now in this market, just think about when this market turns. And when a market turns, it's going to drive a tremendous amount of people to come back into the market. It'll bring a whole new crop of people that are interested in investing in the market and getting involved in a project. And, we're going to be here with open arms waiting to accept these people and bring them into our community.
Awesome. I mean, it's just like you're saying. I mean, when you look at it, right, it's just how does each individual person, view it? You can't change the opinion of the common community member, but we can, state our opinion as a whole. And so for us to be, in a good position,
Ben, you have to believe in the technology. You have to believe in Web3, you have to believe in blockchain, you have to believe that this is the way things are going to work going forward. You have to believe that gaming as a category is going to explode, and it's going to explode in an incredible way, and that explosion is going to be fueled by this technology, by the notion that you can invest in the ownership of a game and play that game as an owner of the foundational assets and of the platform, and that in and of itself is going to draw. It's already happening. I mean, just look at the gaming landscape out there, and we're a sliver of that right now. People are noticing us. They're noticing us a lot, and it's not necessarily evident within the community, but it's very evident to us because the inbound inquiries, the inbound engagement, the inbound interest is bubbling up, and is going to continue to bubble up, and it's going to drive general interest, which will drive public awareness of us through the press, which is going to come, and it's already starting. So, my conviction is very strong. The conviction of the team is incredibly strong. The conviction of our investors is strong. We are not rattled at all or concerned at all about the market. And I will tell you that, we made a decision to launch our mint probably at a stage where we could have said, you know what, we're going to wait a little bit longer for the community to build a little more. I didn't want to risk the market. I didn't want to risk finding ourselves in a volatile period of time that we had no control over. And I felt that there was a little bubbliness in the market. Plus, we had committed to the community that we were going to launch on a specific date. And so we held true to that. And I think we were very fortunate to not have pushed our mint date out, because I think it would be very difficult for people to get out there right now with a project like this. Just like you could be the greatest company in the world with the best business model, the best team, and incredible earnings. And if you have an initial public offering for your stock and it's scheduled and the market crashes, you're not going out. You're delaying that public offering until the market is back to normal, no matter how great your business is. That's common practice. The best banks in the world will tell you that. And this is no different. This is essentially a very similar, way of marketing, right? Crowdsourcing a platform in the same way that an IPO is crowdsourcing ownership of a public company. So, yeah, I'm thrilled with where we are, as is the entire team and every stakeholder in the company.
Awesome. Let's should we get into hodling?
Sure. I know there's been a lot of back and forth on that, and I'm going to kind of say mea culpa that we didn't really think through this as clearly as we should have, thinking about the fact that people are going to move wallets, the fact that people are going to use cold storage, etc. We are committed to recognizing loyal holders and finding ways in which we can track that. And I don't have the answers right now except to say, the blockchain is transparent, and there are many ways to kind of figure this all out, and we will develop a scheme that will reward people for loyalty through hodling. And we will have a date in the future when we're ready to announce how that mechanism is going to work, where we'll announce that. We do have a snapshot of everybody that bought at the end of the original mint, and that is being preserved. And we will take a look at that and figure out something using that. And then we will also deep dive into capabilities around what we can do in identifying loyalty beyond that. And we'll have an announcement in the coming month or so once we have it figured out, but we don't have it figured out. But we are committed to hodling rewards. So I can't tell you I have everything figured out, and I want to be honest and truthful when we don't. And this is one of the things that we're still working on.
Awesome. I mean, I think we just always commit to transparency. So just to
Absolutely.
let everyone know that we're keeping that in mind. Based on what you were saying, I just want to keep saying that everyone is free to move assets around if they wish. We want to be encouraging everybody to be getting a cold storage wallet, so don't worry about keeping your avatars in the original wallet that you minted in per se. Just we want everybody to be safe as possible. So however you're most comfortable with doing that, don't worry about moving things around.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. Um, I'm also going to say, I forgot to mention this when we were talking about marketing. We are going to create a mechanism to pull our community. We want to understand our community more clearly, how you came to join the community, a little bit about your demographic, what is it that interested you in the project, etc. We're in the process of starting to put together a mechanism to be able to acquire that data. And we're hopeful that the community will help us with that, because that will help us be able to target the dollars that we need to spend to acquire and grow a larger community more efficiently. So that is going to come, and we'll have more information on that in the coming weeks. But just a heads up that we'll be looking for the community to help us by giving us information, broad information about the community so that we can piece it together. I know we have a very diverse community that cuts across many segments, and we're excited to learn a little bit more so that we can better target the marketing dollars to grow the community.
Absolutely. And the last kind of point that we were going to discuss was if you want to explain access point, and how it's bringing on some really exciting things.
Yeah, so Access Point is the development shop that we hire to accelerate our development of the platform. We have an internal, quite an impressive internal team that was responsible for everything you've seen to date. But we have a tall task to deliver a functional product alongside the horse drop. And so we want to make sure that we have the best resources possible to do that. And it took us about 3 months to identify the right team and negotiate the right contract and implement it. And Access Point launched, I believe, 2 weeks ago. They have a team of 15 full-time dedicated resources that are focused exclusively on building out the platform, guided by our internal team and complementing our internal development team. So collectively, there's probably 25 people on the development side right now, and that'll grow as we get closer to the launch. Super excited about this process, and our intention is, to have an AMA every few weeks where we're able to share some of the updates from the development. So, we want to keep everybody abreast of our development, share things that are being developed, and kind of keep everybody in the fold. We also have, we've talked about forming committees around some of the functionality. We're working on how we're going to do that internally and begin the process of getting people in the community engaged in that. We're fleshing out a lot of the broad strokes in the white paper, figuring out, so for example, just to share, we had decided to introduce fractionalization to 10 fractions per horse. Well, what if we increase that, or gave you the choice of, do you break your horse into 10 pieces, into 100 pieces? Can you reassemble your horse if you want to? These are things that need to be fleshed out. And that's stuff we're doing, and that's stuff that, we'd love to get people in the community involved in. And that's just like one little thing, but, there are 100 things like that. So to the extent people want to get involved, we'll have a platform to onboard people into committees and start, doing breakout sections and really getting some thought leadership and some brain trust, because there's a lot of really passionate and smart people in the community, and we want to tap them. So, yeah, super excited about that, and super excited as we begin the development. Right now we're in the organizational phases. But as we begin a lot of the development stuff, and we'll start showing things along the way, so everybody will be a part of that and get a chance to see it, and we're excited about that.
Awesome. That was pretty much all of my points I had. I know there was something else, maybe.
Yeah, there's a few things that are coming down the pipeline. I would, just say that we want to, our goal was to solidify the community, to answer all open questions that are out there, to, again, kind of reinforce the foundation and begin the process of continuing to deliver value to the community, which we're going to start seeing very soon. So there's stuff coming out. There's stuff in the pipeline. I talk about the development cycle. The horse mint seems like it's a long ways away, but it's not. 4 months, 4.5 months goes very quickly. And there's going to be a lot of things taking place between now and then that is going to create a lot of sensation within the community. Whether it's the marketing initiatives to drive a broader base of members in the community, whether it's contests, giveaways, airdrops, games within games, things that will get people engaged, that will get the community engaged. We have a lot going on. We have a really nice schedule of things building up to the drop of our inaugural drop of our yearling crop. Just hold on. We're getting there, and I think you guys will. I think the community is going to get very excited about some of the things that are in store, that are literally at the doorstep. So that's what I'm going to say right now.
Perfect.
Suspense is part of the culture. Anticipation is part of the culture, and patience is not. So I'm going to lean on everybody's patience for just a little bit, and that's all I'm going to say.
Awesome. That takes us pretty much right about to an hour. We got the recording, so this will go up on YouTube pretty much right away.
That would be great. And I've promised the community that we're going to summarize some of the talking points in every AMA, so people that don't get an opportunity to either participate live or listen to the recording, they can kind of review a snapshot of what we're doing. So Ben or Squid, I'll task you guys with summarizing the highlights of this and posting them in an announcement section or something. And I'm open. I know it's an hour. I'm open to taking a few questions. If there's something I missed in terms of coverage today, you can take 5 minutes of questions if you'd like.
Yeah, I see a couple people with their hands up. So we'll do 2 questions just to let the community know. So here we go.
What's up, Adam?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Let me unmute here. Thanks for this AMA. I think it's great, and I think the marketing AMA later, it was one of my suggestions earlier in the community, and I think it's great to see. Keep up the great work and really transparent communication. I missed the first 3 minutes of today's AMA here. I was wondering if you spoke about how the formation of the DAO and any legal workings with the DAO creation is going. I'm kind of eagerly anticipating before the Horsemen maybe some more structure into how the DAO and will be funded, exact percentages of earnings, et cetera, et cetera. It'll help me gain a perspective and a true opinion on where I'd like to see the Horsemen price be if I understand the economics a little better of the community. So that was kind of a multi-part question, but it's really, how's the DAO coming along?
Adam, it's a great question. What I can tell you is that we've hired a law firm that specializes in the formation of DAOs. I can also tell you that we are focused on Wyoming as the domicile for the DAO as of right now, and that our intention is for the DAO to be formed well in advance of the horse drop. So think of the next 60 days or so. It is a fairly complex, although it's no different than forming a corporation, there are complexities associated with it that we have to navigate, and we have resources focused on it. So I can't speak to the specifics of how it's going to operate, etc. Other than there is documented within the white paper data on the allocations and distributions and the quantities of the governance tokens and so on and so forth. But I'm writing down. I think it was a great question, and it's something I just put down in my notes to add as an AMA once we have more clarity and more information to be able to share. And I do think that's a very relevant comment you made around the connectivity between, where we should price the horses and an understanding of how the DAO operates. So I think it's a great point. I've taken it down, and I will come back to the community with a very informative session as soon as we have that information available.
Awesome. Appreciate it. It's a huge, kind of the keystone of the community right now. We own some great pictures, and hopefully seeing those in 3D soon. But it's great. I love the community. Love what you guys are doing, and I'm excited to gamble on these horsies.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey
Vincent,
guys, how you doing today?
you're closing us out. How you doing?
Fantastic. Love all the information and the talking points for today. Really awesome stuff. Couple questions. Have you guys considered, instead of just capping the supply of the horses this year at 10K, allowing holders of the avatar to mint up to 2 at a cheaper price to kind of, it'll be around the same risk, and you don't have those long shot horses like we saw, at the Kentucky Derby get missed out on.
Vincent, thanks for your question. We have had internal dialogues around the ideation of expanding the crop. There are various factors to consider as we've thought about that. One of them, again, is introducing a higher degree of risk in the game, which there may be an appetite for. But that appetite is going to be driven by the price point, right? So there's a relationship between where, what's the starting point at which this community wants to play at, and the appetite for risk. And so the first thing we're going to solve for is the price point. And once we've solved for that, then we can look at, okay, if the community decides to want to spend less money on the horses and start at a lower price point, do they have a greater degree of appetite for risk, in which case we can consider expanding the crop. So it's too premature for us to comment on it, other than to tell you that we've had discussions internally and that they revolve around the relationship between, again, price and risk. We want everybody to have a great outcome. And we recognize that in a game, everybody cannot be a winner, because for every winner, there's a loser. And so you have to find that right balance to create engagement and to reward the community that invests and plays the game in a smart way. And look, there's a lot of ways to play the game where you can take out an enormous amount of risk, regardless of how many horses we have and what price they're trading at. It's still stuff that we're working on. And I would say in the course of the next 60 days, we will have all of these resolved. But for right now, we're still sticking to 10,000 of the best horses, as defined by the industry, and to the community setting the price on the horses.
Awesome. And one more thing, I'm not sure if you're aware of these kinds of contracts. They're relatively new, and it's called an ERC 721R contract. And what it does, it basically allows you to lock funds for a period of time after mint, and allows people to refund their mint. And I think it's a great concept. One, because it protects the floor price and the investors, so that basically it'll never go under what it minted for, because they could just refund the mint, opposed to selling it and undercutting on OpenSea for a period of time. Do you have any thoughts about for the upcoming mints using that type of contract opposed to the one that we use already?
So I can tell you that the contract for the Horse Mint is going to be different than the one we use. It's a different type of asset, and we're looking at all the cutting edge technology, all the new types of contracts, type of protocols, and we have a whole team of people at Access Point working with our head of technology to determine all of the stuff. So we're going to ultimately pick a platform and a protocol that's optimized to create the most value for the community. I'm somewhat familiar with ERC 721R. I haven't taken a deep dive into it yet, but we look at this stuff every day. So I can assure you that ultimately, whatever we end up picking is going to be the best technology to create the greatest value for our community.
Awesome. Love to hear that. Nothing too tough for you guys today, but I appreciate you having me up.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you again.
Grandma Nene is the last one.
Oh, you guys are so brave. All right. You made me learn about this other world, and then you made me go back and learn about my old world. And I got 3 avatars, and there's not enough money, US, Canadian, ETH. I don't give a fuck what your currency is, pardon my French. I'm sticking with this. But I gotta know, guys, have you considered the fact that you're setting this all up on an industry that I just went back and I just got reacquainted with, and I'm afraid. All right? I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of this or this project. It kicks ass, and it's going to kick ass. But have you considered the fact that by the time in 6 or 7 years when I have had my kids inherit my avatars because I'm gone, and they're worth a shit ton of money, that we're going to be taking this industry online? Because there isn't going to be any more industry, what's that, IRL? In real life? Yeah. Right now, there are about 7,000 horses every year, 2-year-olds that run. That's about how many there are that sell every year, guys. You're not going to get 10,000 yearlings that are going to run. What are you going to do? How is that going to work? The racing industry is sick. I can see how we can assimilate it, but I don't think we can go parity in 6 or 7 years on an industry that's going to be obsolete. Opinions?
Thank you for your thoughts. There's a lot of things to unpack in your comments. I'll keep it very high level, and I'll respond with a couple of analogs. I'll start with the fact that the horse racing industry has been a dying sport for a while. It was one of the most eloquent.
Am I allowed to say amen?
You can say whatever you would like. We want to bring it back to its glory, and we think that by creating this alternative way of consuming horse racing, that we'll be able to actually grow the industry and propel it back to the place that it really deserves to be in. And that's by really doing a lot of things, including bringing the industry together and leveraging new technology that can do wonderful things that couldn't have been done before. And the bigger that you create, the more attention paid to the industry, the more money flowing into the industry, the more people involved in the industry will ultimately grow the industry, which will incentivize people to in the real world to breed horses and to bring a larger crop of horses into the market. The reason that the industry has been stagnant at 20,000 new yearlings a year is because that number represents the current state of the industry. As we bring, thousands and hundreds of thousands and ultimately millions of people to embrace and adore this sport by experiencing it as owners and not as spectators, that is going to grow the market. And you'll see it start with the development of with the prize pools, which will incentivize people to want to buy more horses in the real world, which will incentivize breeders to want to breed more horses. It's just it's basic economics. You've seen this already in traditional sports. Fantasy changed traditional sports. Today, football and basketball and hockey and golf and soccer are much bigger than they ever would have been if it wasn't for fantasy. Fantasy brought millions of people into the fold that otherwise had no interest in these games and created a much larger economy in the real world. We anticipate the same thing is going to happen. We're at the very, very early stages of this, but we believe that if we're successful and we can attract people into a platform like this and truly develop the game in a way that creates an experience that's unparalleled, that this is going to take off in ways that are going to impact the real world of horse racing in ways they haven't seen in a very long time. So I'm not concerned at all about your observations because I believe that if you were to embrace the fact that this is going to be a major part of the game and it's going to grow the audience by significant amounts, then it's easy to understand how the industry is going to respond to that in a very positive way. Remember that every time somebody new comes into this game and is introduced to horse racing and starts betting on horse racing, right? The prize pools grow. The tracks make more money. The tracks share more of that money with the owners. The owners want to be a bigger part of the game now, and it just grows and grows and grows the economy. And that's what we expect will happen. We just have to get this right. But it will happen, and it can happen very, very fast. So that's a kind of a short answer to your question, or to your observations.
Short, but I'll be back.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for coming on stage. And thank you all for participating in this AMA. I hope we've
Thanks
answered...
for being patient.
Of course. I hope we've answered a lot of your questions, and some exciting stuff to come very soon, and look forward to speaking to everybody in the next week.